I was just 29 when they read my husband's will. His mistress smirked as she was handed the mansion. I received nothing except a worthless shack at the edge of town. When I objected, my husband's father sneered. Be thankful. At least you got something. So that night, I drove out to the shack. But the moment I opened the door, my knees buckled. What I found inside changed everything. Can you believe I once thought the most humiliating moment of my life was watching my husband's mistress inherit our mansion? Oh, if only I knew that was just the appetizer to a whole buffet of betrayal, murder, and secrets that had been watching me since I was a teenager, proving Marcus's death was no accident at all. I was 29, sitting in that stuffy, mahogany-paneled law office, feeling like the walls were closing in. 3 weeks. It had only been 3 weeks since Marcus, my husband, died in a car crash. And now I was clutching his wedding band so tight it dug into my palm, surrounded by people who'd once called themselves family, about to discover just how thoroughly I'd been betrayed. Melissa, his mistress, sat right across from me. She was wearing this little black dress, totally inappropriate for a reading, and kept touching a pearl necklace around her throat. A performance, you know? Every now and then, she'd catch my eye and flash this sympathetic smile that looked more like a cat eyeing a wounded bird. My mother-in-law, Patricia, sat rigid beside me, not even glancing my way. And my father-in-law, Richard, the king at the head of the table, stared at the lawyer with these steel-gray eyes that made me wonder what he already knew. Mr. Harrison, the lawyer, a frail old man with liver spots, cleared his throat. The last will and testament of Marcus Jonathan Whitmore, he droned, written and notarized 6 months prior to his death. 6 months. My stomach twisted. 6 months ago, we were planning our 5th anniversary trip to Greece, picking out pictures of Santorini. 6 months ago, I thought we were happy. To my beloved Melissa Crawford, he continued, and the blood just drained from my face. Beloved. The word hung in the air like a physical slap. He left her the mansion. Our home. No, what I thought was our home, the place I'd spent 2 years meticulously decorating, trying to build a life. Melissa's lips curved into this slow, triumphant smile. Then came the investment portfolio, the Mercedes-Benz, the BMW X5, the vacation property in Aspen. Each item felt like a twist of the knife. The Aspen cabin where we'd made love by the fireplace last Christmas. The Mercedes he'd given me for my birthday, now apparently hers. I wanted to scream, to flip the table, but I just sat there, frozen, the wedding band still digging into my skin. This is insane. I finally managed to croak, my voice sounding distant. We were married. California is a community property state. He can't just, everything was in his name, Sophia. Richard cut in, his voice flatboard. Purchase before your marriage or with his inheritance. Separate property. Just like that, my entire life, dismissed. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat again, a nervous habit. There is more, Mrs. Whitmore. To my wife, Sophia Marie Whitmore. I leave the property at 1847 Old Mill Road, commonly known as the Fisher Shack. The Fisher Shack. Oh, I knew the place. Everyone did. A crumbling, abandoned eyesore on the edge of town, steeped in local ghost stories. That's what Marcus left me. That fits her perfectly, Melissa stage whispered to her friend. Cheap and pathetic. The snickers that followed burned like acid. Even Patricia's mouth twitched. But it was Richard's expression that hurt most, a mix of satisfaction and relief. This has to be a mistake. I yelled, standing so fast my chair crashed into the wall. Marcus promised me. We had plans. My voice broke, and I hated myself for showing weakness. Sit down, Sophia, Richard warned. You're making a scene. Making a scene? I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Your son just left everything to his mistress, and I'm making a scene? Be grateful, he said, his steel eyes narrowing. At least you got something. Marcus could have left you nothing. Nothing. The implication hung heavy. I should be grateful for a rotting shack. Grateful that he remembered me at all, while handing over our life to the woman who now wore his grandmother's pearl necklace, the one he'd said was being cleaned. Mr. Harrison slid a rusty old key across the table. The property transfers immediately. All taxes paid through the end of the year. 3 months. They'd given me 3 months to figure out what to do with a worthless shack, while Melissa moved into my home, drove my car, spent his money. I'll contest this, I vowed, grabbing the cold, rough key. That is your right, Mrs. Whitmore, the lawyer said, professionally neutral. However, the will was properly executed. Grounds for contest are limited. Have fun in your shack. Melissa called out as I headed for the door, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. I hear it's lovely this time of year. I didn't turn around. Couldn't. If I had, I might have done something that would land me in jail. Instead, I walked out, head high, tears blurring my vision until I reached my old Honda Civic, the one Marcus always complained about. Then the sobs came. The sun was setting by the time I could drive, painting the sky in mocking shades of orange and pink. I should have gone to my sister Elena's, but something pulled me toward Old Mill Road. Morbid curiosity? The need to see how deeply Marcus had humiliated me? Or something else, a whisper in the back of my mind that sounded almost like Marcus's voice. There are places I'll never let you go, Sophia. Not safe for you. He'd said that once. Now I wondered if he'd been hiding something even then. The drive was eerie. The road narrowed, streetlights vanished. My headlights carved through absolute darkness until I saw it. 1847, Old Mill Road. The shack squatted in a clearing like something from a horror movie. Sagging roof, boarded windows, vines creeping like skeletal fingers. It was past 9, I was alone, and the place looked like it could collapse if I breathed on it wrong. But that key, it burned in my pocket. And Marcus's whisper grew louder. What was he hiding? The key jammed in the lock, then with a sickening grind, it turned. The door screamed open on protesting hinges, sending bats fluttering from the eaves. My heart hammered. I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. My phone's flashlight cut through the gloom. The air was thick with dust and rot, but underneath, something else, metallic and sharp, like old pennies or blood. No, that was ridiculous. The floorboards groaned under my weight. Dust motes danced in my flashlight beam like tiny ghosts. The main room was bigger than I expected, cluttered with furniture under sheets. But it was the walls that made me stop. Covered in deliberate carvings, not graffiti, initials, dates, symbols I didn't recognize. Jam 1987. The deal is done. 1993, they know. Run. 2001. Then, what looked like a family tree, half the names violently scratched out. I searched for Marcus's name, Annie Whitmore, but the writing was too faded. The fireplace was stuffed with papers. I pulled one free, and it disintegrated. Transfer complete. Liability assumed. In the event of discovery, asterisk knock. Knock. Knock, asterisk a deliberate, measured sound from beneath the floor. 3 taps, a pause, 3 more. My rational mind screamed house-settling animals, but it sounded so intentional, so human. Hello, I whispered. Louder, is someone there? Silence. Then, knock, knock, knock again, from a different spot, moving as if something was tracking me. My flashlight beam wavered. This was stupid. I was in an abandoned building at night, jumping at shadows. I should leave. But as I turned, my light caught something, a photograph tucked into a broken mirror. Unlike everything else, it looked new. It was Marcus, younger, maybe 10 years before I met him. He stood in front of this very shack with 3 other men in expensive suits, smiling, holding champagne glasses. Phase 1 complete. 2014, the back read. A year before we met at that charity fundraiser. He'd said he was supporting the hospital wing. I was a volunteer. He'd been charming, attentive. Had it all been planned? Another knock from below, so forceful dust rained from the ceiling. I stumbled back, hitting a covered table. The sheet slipped off, revealing dozens of photographs. All of me. Me at graduation. Me at my first job interview. Jogging. Drinking coffee. Shopping. Some dated years before I'd met Marcus. One, I couldn't have been more than 17, in my high school uniform, utterly unaware someone was watching. Documenting. Studying me. My legs gave out. I sank onto the dusty couch. The wedding band fell from my numb fingers, rolling into the shadows. How long had they been watching? Who were they? I wasn't special. Just Sophia. Middle-class Sophia, who thought she'd won the lottery when Marcus Whitmore showed interest. The knocking stopped, replaced by a scratching, like nails on wood, moving, circling beneath the floor. I pulled my feet onto the couch, terrified something might grab my ankles. My phone buzzed. Elena. Asking if I was okay. Home? Did I even have a home? I started to text her back, but then all the lights on my phone went out. Not just the flashlight. The screen went black. Dead. The darkness was absolute. And in that darkness, I heard it clearly, a door opening somewhere deeper in the house. Footsteps. Slow, measured. Stopping, then continuing. Getting closer. I pressed myself deeper into the couch, barely breathing. The footsteps entered the room. They paused. I heard breathing that wasn't my own. Slow, steady. The faint smell of cigarette smoke. Then, as suddenly as it died, my phone blazed back to life. The flashlight resuming. The room was empty. But on the dusty floor, fresh footprints led from the doorway to just a few feet from where I sat. Then they simply stopped. On the table, where the photos had been, a new item appeared, a leather-bound notebook. On its cover, in faded gold lettering, Sophia. My hands trembled as I reached for it. Every instinct screamed to run, but I had to know. Marcus's handwriting filled the pages, dating back 3 years before we met. The first entry made my stomach clench. Subject acquired. Surveillance begins tomorrow. R insists she's perfect for the role. No family money limited. Connections, ambitious enough to be grateful for attention. If she's as malleable as the background check suggests, phase 2 can begin within 18 months. I was going to be sick. Our entire relationship. Our marriage. An operation. For what? More pages. Surveillance logs, notes about my habits, weaknesses, strategies to make me fall in love, to keep me isolated. A door slammed somewhere, sharp, violent. Then another. And another. Every door in the house seemed to be slamming in sequence, growing louder, closer. I ran. Crashed through the front door, stumbled down the rotten steps, my phone light swinging wildly as I sprinted for my car. Behind me, the house was silent again, but I felt it watching. I fumbled with my keys, finally started the engine, threw the car into reverse. As my headlights swept across the shack one last time, I saw a figure in one of the broken windows. Tall, unmoving. Just a silhouette against the deeper darkness. Then I was speeding away, that leather notebook clutched against my chest, my mind racing. Marcus's voice echoed in my memory. If anything happens to me, Soph, stay away from the shack. Promise me. I'd laughed it off. Now, parked outside Elena's house, doors locked, engine running, I understood his fear. Whatever was in that shack, whatever secrets it held, they were dangerous. But I was going back. Someone wanted me to know. And tomorrow, in daylight, with backup, I would tear that place apart. The shack they'd left me as an insult would become the key to my revenge. I just had to survive long enough to use it. The morning sun did nothing to lessen the shack's ominous presence. If anything, daylight revealed even more damage. Sophia, this place should be condemned, Elena said, pulling her jacket tighter. Her boyfriend, Tom, a construction worker, poked at support beams. One good storm, and the whole thing comes down. But I wasn't listening. My eyes were fixed on the window where I'd seen that figure. It was just an empty frame now, but I knew what I'd seen. I need to get something, I said, moving toward the door. Important paperwork. Financial documents. Not entirely a lie. The notebook confirmed there were more records here. Then we all go, Elena insisted, grabbing my arm. Tom grabbed a crowbar and flashlight. Stay behind me. Step where I step. The house felt different in daylight. Less malevolent, more sadly decrepit. The photos were gone, the table bare. Even the footprints had vanished. What exactly are we looking for? Tom asked, testing each floorboard. Anything that looks important, I said, running my hands along the walls. Marcus's notebook mentioned a safe room. It was Elena who found it. This room is too small, she said in what would have been a bedroom. Look at the exterior wall. There's at least 3 feet missing. Tom immediately pried at the boards. Behind it, a narrow, deep-hidden space with a ladder leading down into darkness. The hidden cellar was a different world. Reinforced concrete, smooth cement. Industrial shelving lined the walls, loaded with bankers' boxes labeled with dates and code names. A workbench held old cameras, recording devices, even phone tapping equipment. "What the hell was your husband into?" Elena whispered, picking up a spy movie device. I didn't answer. I'd found a box labeled, Acquisition, Sophia Marie Chen. 2008 to 2015, my maiden name. The years before I met Marcus. Inside were detailed reports, photos, college transcripts, medical records, and a psychological profile that dissected my personality. Subject shows signs of father abandonment issues, likely to respond positively to older male authority figures. Recommend Marcus adopt paternal protective role initially. Transitioning to romantic interest once trust established. My hand shook. Every vulnerability cataloged and weaponized. Sophia, you need to see this, Tom said, voice tight. He was holding an open box filled with rolls of cash. Old bills, some from the 80s, all in sequential serial numbers. Hundreds of thousands. This is evidence of something, Elena said, already taking pictures. Money laundering. Maybe we should call the police. No, I said, sharper than I intended. Not yet. I need to understand what this is first. I moved to another box. Contracts. Legalese I couldn't fully understand, but names kept appearing, Richard Whitmore. And at the bottom, witness signatures including Marcus and someone named J. Fisher. Fisher. Like the Fisher Shack. A photograph slipped from between the contracts. Older, from the 70s. A group of men in front of the shack. A younger Richard Whitmore. But it was the man next to him that made me gasp, Joseph Fisher. I'd seen him in newspaper archives. Real estate developer who disappeared in 1987 under mysterious circumstances, leaving a fortune never found. Oh my God, I breathed, pieces clicking. They killed him. They killed Fisher and took his money. Used this place to hide it. Sophia, that's a huge accusation, Elena began. But I was already pulling out more documents. Look at the dates. Fisher disappears in August 1987. These contracts start transferring his properties to shell companies in September 1987. All witnessed by Richard Whitmore and Associates. This serial number range. Tom's face was pale. My dad talked about this. These bills were part of a federal investigation in the early 90s. Massive real estate fraud, never solved. Asterisk thump. 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 Asterisk heavy, deliberate footsteps above. We hadn't heard a car, hadn't heard the door. But someone was up there. We need to leave, Elena whispered. But I was already gathering documents, shoving them into my bag. The footsteps stopped directly above the hidden entrance. Then Richard Whitmore's voice drifted down, conversational and calm. I know you're down there, Sophia. We need to talk. My blood turned to ice. How did he know? Don't come up. Elena hissed, reaching for her phone. The police won't help you, dear, Richard continued. Half of them are on our payroll. Have been since Fisher's time. Now, you can come up or I can come down. But this ladder is the only way out, and I'd rather not have this conversation in that musty cellar. Tom was frowning at his phone. No signal. Cell jammer, Richard's voice explained pleasantly. I looked at Elena and Tom, seeing my fear reflected in their eyes. But also determination. Elena picked up an old camera, hefting it like a weapon. Tom grabbed his crowbar. We go up together, I said quietly. He won't do anything with witnesses. I was wrong. Richard wasn't alone. 3 men stood with him, all in suits, all with a build that screamed not desk jobs. Richard himself looked completely at ease. Marcus was supposed to keep you away from here, he said, examining the wall carvings with nostalgia. That was the entire point of the marriage. Keep you close but controlled. Make sure you never went digging into your connection to all this. What connection? I demanded, my voice stronger than I felt. I'd never even heard of this place before the will reading. Richard finally turned, his smile almost pitying. Your maiden name is Chin, but your mother's maiden name was Fisher. Joseph Fisher was your great-uncle, though your mother never knew it. He had a falling out with the family years ago, changed his name, built his fortune from scratch. But blood is blood, and when we discovered you existed, well, we couldn't risk you making a claim on his estate. The room spun. So, you had Marcus marry me too, what? Make sure I never found out. Initially, yes. But Marcus grew fond of you. Started having second thoughts. He was going to tell you everything. Richard's expression hardened. That's why he had to go. You killed your own son. Elena's voice was horrified. Richard didn't deny it. The syndicate comes first. Always has. Marcus knew that when he was brought in. He forgot it when he fell in love with you. He said love like it was a dirty word. Sentiment has no place in business. This isn't business, it's murder. Tom stepped forward, but one of the suited men blocked his path. Prove it, Richard said simply. My son died in a tragic accident. Police investigated. Case closed. I thought about the notebook in my bag, the photos, the cellar. If you were going to kill me, you would have done it already, I challenged. Richard laughed, a sound like ice cracking. Kill you? My dear, you're worth more alive. You're the last legitimate Fisher heir. With you under our control, any future claims, any investigations, they all stop with you. Marcus was supposed to get you pregnant, ensure the bloodline continued under our supervision. But he got sentimental. Started talking about running away with you. I'll never help you, I declared. You already are, Richard replied. Just by accepting the shack, you've legally acknowledged the will. By entering this property, you've established possession. And now that you've found our little storage facility, well, you're complicit. Those documents down there? Your fingerprints are all over them. That money? You've handled it. If this ever comes to light, you'll go down with us. It was a trap. I'd walked right into it. You're insane if you think I'll keep quiet. But Richard was already moving toward the door. You'll keep quiet because you have no choice. Go to the police with your wild theories. See how far you get. Detective Morrison plays poker with me every Thursday. Judge Hamilton's daughter got into Harvard thanks to a generous donation from our education fund. The district attorney? He owns 3 properties that used to belong to your great-uncle. He paused at the doorway. Clean up this mess, Sophia. Get rid of those documents. Forget what you think you know. And we'll leave you alone. You can keep the shack. Fix it up. Sell it. Burn it down for all I care. But if you try to use what you found here against us, remember, you're not just fighting me. You're fighting 40 years of established power. They left us in stunned silence. Only when the car engine started and faded into the distance did any of us move. We're going to the FBI, Elena said immediately. This is beyond local corruption. But I was staring at something Richard's men had left, a cigarette but still smoldering on the dusty table. The same brand I'd smelled last night. They'd been here then too. Watching me. Letting me find just enough to implicate myself. He's right about one thing, I said slowly. My fingerprints are all over that evidence now. If they spin it right, I could look like I was involved all along. The neglected wife who knew about her husband's criminal connections and tried to profit from his death. That's ridiculous. Tom protested, but I could see him processing it, how a good lawyer could twist the narrative. I looked out the window at the tire tracks. Multiple vehicles. How many people were involved? How deep did it go? We need to be smarter, I said. We can't just run to law enforcement without knowing who we can trust. First, we document everything. Every piece of paper, every serial number on those bills, every photograph. We build a case so airtight that even corrupted officials can't ignore it. Elena was already taking more photos, but she looked troubled. Sophia, what if they come back? What if they decide you're too much of a liability? I thought about Marcus, about his accident. No skid marks, no sign he tried to brake. Police ruled it driver error. But he'd been coming from his parents' house, and he'd called me an hour before, agitated, saying he needed to tell me something important. Then we make sure I'm not an easy target, I said. We make copies of everything. Store them in different places. We create a dead man switch. If something happens to me, everything goes public. Tom, examining the cellar entrance, suddenly straightened. There's another level. He pointed at the ladder, which continued down past the first cellar floor. See, there's a hatch painted to blend in, but the ladder keeps going. My heart raced. We opened the hatch, revealing a second, smaller, older chamber. It contained a single item, a metal filing cabinet. Inside were the real secrets. Not just financial documents, but photographs of crime scenes, what looked like murder confessions, and a leather-bound ledger detailing every crime the syndicate had committed since 1987. Names, dates, methods. And most importantly, who had ordered each action. Marcus's death was in there, listed as Termination Order Number 47. Subject, Marcus Whitmore. Reason, security breach / potential whistleblower. Authorized by R. Whitmore. Method, vehicular incident. Status, complete. Richard had signed his own son's death warrant. But it was the next entry that made my blood run cold. Termination Order Number 48. Subject, Sophia Whitmore. Reason, inherited liability. Authorized by R. Whitmore. Method, TBD. Status, pending review. We need to leave. Elena's voice was high with panic. Right now. We grabbed everything we could carry, the ledger, key documents, photographs. As we climbed back up, I noticed something I'd missed before, fresh scratches around the doorframe. Tom saw it too, his face paling. Cameras, he whispered. They're watching us right now. We ran for Tom's truck, throwing everything inside. As we peeled out of the driveway, I saw them in the rearview mirror, 2 black SUVs emerging from the tree line, following us. Where do we go? Elena asked, clutching the ledger. The newspaper, I said, thinking fast. The Coastal Tribune. Jenny Martinez. She's an investigative reporter. She's been trying to expose corruption for years. If we can get to her, get this published before they stop us. Tom took a hard right, tires squealing. They're gaining on us. The next few minutes were a blur of sharp turns and near misses. We burst onto Main Street, Saturday shoppers jumping back as we careened past. The Tribune building was just ahead. I could see Jenny's car. We screeched to a stop, and I was running before Tom even threw it in park, the ledger clutched against my chest. I burst through the doors, past the receptionist, up the stairs. Jenny was at her desk, her eyes widening. Sophia, what? Richard Whitmore killed his son. I gasped, shoving the ledger at her. And Joseph Fisher. It's all in here. The whole syndicate, 40 years of crimes. They're coming for me right now. Jenny, to her credit, didn't hesitate. She grabbed the ledger, her scanner already warming up. Get everything digital, now. Elena and Tom burst in behind me, arms full of documents. Other reporters stood, sensing a story. Jenny started barking orders, and suddenly the newsroom was a hive of activity, scanning, photographing, uploading. They can't stop all of us, Jenny said, her fingers flying over her keyboard. Not once it's out there. Through the window, I saw the black SUVs pulling into the parking lot. Richard stepped out, phone pressed to his ear. He looked up at the newsroom window, and our eyes met. His expression was unreadable, but I saw him say something to his men. They stayed by the cars. My phone rang. An unknown number. Don't answer. Elena started. But I already had. You've made a serious mistake. Richard's voice was calm. Too calm. You have no idea what you're destroying. You destroyed it yourself when you killed Marcus, I said, putting him on speaker so Jenny could record. When you killed Joseph Fisher. Fisher was a pedophile, Richard said bluntly. Did you see that in your precious documents? He had a thing for teenage boys. 3 families came to us begging for justice the law wouldn't provide. Yes, we killed him. And we took his money and used it to build something better. Schools, hospitals, homeless shelters, all funded with Fisher's blood money. I faltered. This wasn't in the documents. But Jenny was shaking her head, mouthing lie. Even if that were true, it doesn't justify 40 years of murder and corruption, I said. Doesn't it? We cleaned up this town, Sophia. When we took over, it was dying. Drugs, violence, poverty. Now look at it. Thriving, safe. All because we were willing to do what needed to be done. You killed your own son. A pause. Then, quieter, Marcus made his choice. He chose you over his family, over his obligations. I gave him every chance to come back, to remember who he was. He refused. So you had him murdered. I had a problem solved. Just like I'll solve this one. The line went dead. Through the window, I watched the SUVs pull away. They were leaving. Why were they leaving? Jenny's computer pinged. Then another reporter's. What's happening? I asked. Jenny's face had gone white. Every file we just uploaded, they're being deleted. From our servers, from the cloud, from everywhere. How is that possible? Tom was at his laptop. It's not just here. Every copy I emailed myself to my contacts, they're all gone. It's like they never existed. I looked down at the physical ledger in my hands. It was all we had left. The originals were back at the shack, probably already being destroyed. My phone buzzed with a text from Richard. You have 1 hour to return what you've stolen. After that, termination order number 48 goes into effect. Your friends, too. Their families. Everyone you've involved in this. 1 hour. Elena grabbed my hand. We run. Right now. We take the ledger and we run. But I was thinking about Marcus, about the fear in his eyes that last night. He'd known. He'd tried to protect me the only way he knew how, by leaving me the shack. Knowing I'd find the truth. Knowing I'd have leverage. No, I said quietly. We don't run. We fight. But we fight smart. I turned to Jenny. How fast can you get a camera crew here? She blinked. 20 minutes. Do it. Live broadcast. We go public with everything right now before they can stop us. I held up the ledger. They can delete digital files, but they can't delete a live broadcast that thousands of people are watching. Jenny was already making calls. Other reporters were setting up cameras, transforming the newsroom into an impromptu studio. I looked back at the window. The black SUVs had returned. But now there were more of them. A lot more. They were surrounding the building. Sophia, Tom said quietly. What if they don't care about witnesses? What if they're past that point? I thought about Richard's voice on the phone. The resignation when he talked about Marcus. They were past caring about collateral damage. This was endgame for them. And for us. Then we make sure the truth outlives us, I said, opening the ledger to Marcus's termination order. We make sure his death meant something. The camera's red light blinked on. Jenny held up 3 fingers, then 2, then 1. Good evening, she began, her voice steady despite everything. We're interrupting our regular programming with explosive revelations about a criminal syndicate that has controlled our city for 40 years. Through the window, I saw Richard on his phone again, his face twisted with rage. But he wasn't looking at the building anymore. He was looking up the street, where police cars were arriving. Not local police. State police. FBI. Someone else had been watching. Someone else had been waiting for this moment. As Jenny continued her broadcast, as the ledger's secrets spilled out into the light, I felt something shift in the air. The shack had one more secret, I realized. One more card to play. Because there had been another watcher all along. Someone in the shadows, documenting everything, just like the syndicate had documented me. The cigarette butts. The mysteriously appearing notebook with my name on it. The convenient discovery of the cellar. Someone had been guiding me to this moment. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Well played, Mrs. Whitmore. Your husband would be proud. The rest of the evidence is en route to federal authorities. Signed, JF. JF. Joseph Fisher. But Joseph Fisher had been dead for 40 years, hadn't he? The federal agents had cordoned off the Tribune building, but they couldn't stop what had already begun. Jenny's broadcast had gone viral within minutes, picked up by national networks before Richard's people could suppress it. Now, 3 days later, I sat in the town library's basement archives, surrounded by old newspapers and microfiche that the syndicate apparently hadn't thought to destroy. Elena sat across from me, cross-referencing names from the ledger. The FBI had the original now, but I'd memorized enough to know what to look for. Found something, Elena said, turning her screen toward me. Joseph Fisher had a son. Death certificate filed in 1986, 1 year before Joseph supposedly died. But look at this. She pulled up another document. School enrollment records show A.J. Fisher Jr. attending private school in Switzerland from 1986 to 1990. My pulse quickened. He faked his son's death to protect him. Or someone else did. Elena's fingers flew across the keyboard. The death certificate was signed by Dr. Marcus Whitmore Sr., Richard's older brother. He died in a boating accident 2 months after signing it. Another accident. Another convenient death. The pattern was so clear now. The fluorescent lights flickered. I glanced at the exits. Even with federal protection, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The syndicate had operated for 40 years. They wouldn't go down without a fight. My phone buzzed. Another text from JF, Municipal Records, Box 1847. Third folder. Time you knew the whole truth. 1847, the same number as the shack's address. I found the box quickly, my hands trembling as I opened the third folder. Inside were property deeds. Not just any properties. These were for buildings all over town, all purchased between 1970 and 1987. All in my mother's maiden name. Fisher. Oh my God, I breathed. My mother owned half the town and never knew it. The deeds were tucked behind falsified documents showing the properties transferred to the syndicate's shell companies, but the originals were here. Hidden in plain sight in public records that no one had bothered to check because everyone assumed Joseph Fisher had no heirs. Elena was reading over my shoulder. Sophia, if these are legitimate, you don't just own that shack. You own them all. The business district, 3 hotels. Billions in real estate. Which explains why they needed me under control, I said, the pieces finally clicking. It wasn't just about keeping me quiet. They needed me alive, but ignorant, in case anyone ever challenged their ownership. They could always produce me as the heir who had willingly transferred the properties. A shadow fell across the table. I looked up to find an elderly man standing there, straight-backed, with eyes that seemed familiar. He wore an expensive suit that didn't quite hide the shoulder holster beneath. Mrs. Whitmore, he said quietly. We need to talk. Elena started to stand, reaching for her phone, but the man held up a hand. I'm not with them. I've been fighting them for 40 years. My name is James Fisher. Joseph's son. The one who'd supposedly died. I stared at him, seeing it now. The same jawline as in Joseph's old photos. The same intense gaze. You sent the texts, I said. He nodded, pulling out a chair. I've been watching, waiting for the right moment. When Marcus married you, I thought it was over. They'd won. But then Marcus started having doubts. He reached out to me, wanted to know the truth about his family's empire. You were in contact with Marcus for the last 6 months of his life? He was gathering evidence, planning to bring them all down. The ledger you found? Marcus compiled most of it. He was going to give it to you on your anniversary. Tell you everything. James's face darkened. Richard found out 3 days before. You know the rest. I thought about Marcus's strange behavior in those final weeks. The late nights, the mysterious phone calls. The way he'd held me like he was saying goodbye. He'd known what was coming. Why didn't you help him? Elena demanded. Why let him die? I tried. I warned him to run, to take you and disappear. But Marcus believed he could outsmart his father. He thought Richard would never actually. James stopped, swallowing hard. He underestimated how far Richard would go to protect the syndicate. And now? I asked. What's your plan? James pulled a thick envelope from his jacket. 40 years of evidence. Everything my father gathered before they killed him. Everything I've collected since, and everything Marcus added. Bank records, murder confessions, recorded conversations. The FBI has copies, but I wanted you to have the originals. Why? Because this is your fight now. Your inheritance. Not just the properties, but the responsibility to see justice done. He stood, wincing. They'll come for me now that I've shown myself. But it doesn't matter anymore. The truth is out. Wait, I said as he turned to leave. Your father, the things Richard said about him. Lies, James said flatly. My father was investigating child trafficking in the foster system. He got too close to the truth, found out some powerful people were involved. So, They killed him and destroyed his reputation to make sure no one would listen if any evidence surfaced. He walked away before I could ask more questions, disappearing into the stacks. When I tried to follow, he was gone. No sign he'd ever been there except for the envelope in my hands. Inside were photographs I'd never seen. Marcus and James together, planning. Recordings on USB drives, financial records leading to judges, senators, even a governor. The syndicate wasn't just a local operation. It was a cancer that had metastasized throughout the state. We need to get this to the FBI immediately, Elena said. But I was looking at something else. A note in Marcus's handwriting, dated the day before he died. Sophia, if you're reading this, then I failed to protect you, and I'm sorry. The shack isn't your prison. It's your weapon. Everything they've built sits on stolen land, your land. The original deeds are hidden in the library, box 1847. The development contracts are all fraudulent. One lawsuit and their entire empire crumbles. But be careful. They'll kill to protect it. Trust Jenny Martinez. Trust Agent Sarah Coleman at the FBI. And trust yourself. You're stronger than you know. All my love. Tears blurred my vision. He tried to save me, even knowing it would cost him everything. My phone rang. Jenny Martinez. Sophia, you need to see the news now. We ran upstairs to the main floor where a crowd was gathered around the television. Breaking news, Richard Whitmore arrested in federal corruption probe. There he was, being led away in handcuffs, his face a mask of cold fury. But it was the next arrest that shocked me. Patricia Whitmore, Marcus's mother, also in cuffs. Her perfect composure finally cracked. The FBI raided their homes an hour ago, Jenny said, appearing beside me. Found enough evidence to put them away for life. But Sophia, there's something else. She handed me her phone. The screen showed a news article. Local businessman found dead in apparent suicide. The businessman was James Fisher. The man I had just spoken to an hour ago had been dead since dawn. That's impossible, I said, my voice shaking. He was just here. He gave me this. I held up the envelope. Jenny's expression was grim. Security footage shows you and Elena alone at that table for the past 2 hours. No one else came near you. The envelope in my hands was real. But James Fisher was dead. Had been dead for hours before our conversation. Elena grabbed my arm. Sophia, we need to leave now, because standing in the library entrance were 3 men I recognized from the syndicate files. Enforcers. Not arrested. Walking toward us with purpose. We didn't run. Couldn't. Not with dozens of witnesses around. Instead, I walked straight toward them, my phone already recording. Mrs. Whitmore, the lead man said smoothly. Daniel Morrison. Younger, handsome in a corporate way. I'm Daniel Morrison. I represent certain interests that would like to make you an offer. Morrison? As in Detective Morrison who played poker with Richard? Your father's on Richard's payroll. His smile didn't waver. My father is currently in federal custody. Actually, turns out he kept meticulous records of every bribe he took. Very embarrassing for the family. He gestured toward a conference room. Shall we talk privately? Anything you have to say can be said right here, I replied, aware that Jenny was recording too, and other library patrons had their phones out. Very well. Daniel pulled out a tablet. We're prepared to acknowledge your inheritance claim to the Fisher properties. Full market value, approximately $2.8 billion. All you have to do is sign a non-disclosure agreement about past irregularities. Irregularities? You mean murders? I mean, business practices that, while perhaps aggressive, were standard for the time. His tone remained pleasant, but his eyes were cold. Take the deal, Mrs. Whitmore. You'll be wealthy beyond imagination. I already am, I said, holding up the original deeds. These predate your fraudulent contracts. I don't need your acknowledgement. I own those properties outright. For the first time, Daniel's composure cracked. Those documents won't hold up in court. Too many questions about their authenticity, their chain of custody. Then I guess we'll let a judge decide. I turned to walk away, but his next words stopped me cold. Melissa Crawford would like to speak with you. About Marcus. About what really happened that night. Melissa, the mistress. I'd been so focused on Richard, I'd almost forgotten her. She's waiting in the conference room, Daniel continued. She has information you need to hear. Every instinct screamed trap, but the mention of Marcus made the decision for me. Elena and Jenny followed as I walked into the conference room. Melissa sat at the polished table, looking nothing like the confident woman from the wall reading. Her designer clothes were wrinkled, her makeup smeared, her hands shaking. He wasn't supposed to die, she said without preamble, her voice raw. Richard promised me no one would get hurt. I sat across from her, my rage warring with a desperate need for answers. Start from the beginning. Melissa laughed bitterly. The beginning? I was hired 5 years ago. My job was to seduce Marcus, make him fall in love with me, give Richard leverage over his son. It was just another assignment. I'd done it before with other targets. You're a professional honeypot? Jenny asked, her recorder openly visible. Was past tense. Melissa met my eyes, and I saw something unexpected there. Guilt. Marcus never fell for it. He knew what I was from day one. He played along to keep his father happy, but he never touched me. Never even kissed me. Everything Richard thought was happening between us was fake. The room spun. But the will? The inheritance. Window dressing. Marcus changed his will to make it look like our affair was real. To keep Richard from getting suspicious while he gathered evidence. He was supposed to change it back before. She trailed off, fresh tears cutting through her makeup. Before what? Before we ran. All 3 of us. You, me, and Marcus. He'd arranged new identities. Had money hidden offshore. We were going to disappear. Let the FBI handle Richard while we started over somewhere safe. Melissa pulled out her phone, scrolling to a message thread. Look, these are our real conversations. I read Marcus's messages, my heart breaking with each word. Just a few more days, Mel. Get Sophia somewhere safe on the 15th. I'll handle my father. Then we all disappear. Thank you for protecting her. I know this hasn't been easy for you. Protecting me? I looked up at Melissa. Who do? You think kept the other enforcers away from you? Who made sure your food wasn't poisoned? Your car wasn't tampered with? Melissa's voice was fierce now. I've been your bodyguard for 2 years, Sophia. Marcus hired me to infiltrate his father's organization and protect you from the inside. Elena leaned forward. So, you're saying you're actually, what? An undercover agent. Former FBI, actually. I left the bureau after my partner was killed by someone on Richard's payroll. I've been working independently ever since, taking down corrupt organizations from within. She looked at me again. Marcus found me through James Fisher. They offered me a chance at revenge against Richard, and I took it. But if you were protecting us, why didn't you stop them from killing Marcus? Melissa's composure shattered completely. Because I didn't know. Richard kept me out of the loop that night. Sent me to Aspen on a fake errand. By the time I realized what was happening, Marcus was already. She choked on a sob. I failed. I failed him, and I failed you. Daniel Morrison had been standing by the door. Now he stepped forward. Touching story. Completely unprovable, of course. And it doesn't change the fundamental situation. The syndicate is bigger than Richard Whitmore. Cut off the head and it grows back. Is that a threat? Jenny asked, her camera turning toward him. It's a reality. Do you think a few arrests will stop this? We have resources you can't imagine. Connections at every level. Take the money, sign the NDA, and live your life. Or keep fighting and end up like Marcus. The room went cold. But before I could respond, the door burst open. Federal agents flooded in, weapons drawn, shouting for everyone to get down. Daniel reached for something in his jacket and was immediately tackled. Agent Sarah Coleman, the one Marcus had told me to trust, helped me to my feet. Are you hurt? No, how did you? Your guardian angel, she said with a slight smile. Mr. Fisher's son has been quite helpful. But James Fisher is dead. James Fisher is in protective custody. The body this morning was a syndicate plant trying to flush him out. She turned to Melissa. Miss Crawford will need your full cooperation. Melissa nodded, looking relieved. You'll have it. Everything. 20 years of operations, names, dates, methods. I want them all to burn. As the agents led Daniel and his men away, I found myself standing with Elena, Jenny, and Melissa. An unlikely alliance brought together by Marcus's death. What now? Elena asked. I looked at the documents spread on the table. Deeds, evidence, 40 years of secrets. Then I thought about Marcus's note, about the shack being a weapon, not a prison. Now we tear it all down, I said. Every corrupt official, every dirty deal, every crime they thought they'd buried. We use the properties to fund the investigation, turn their own resources against them. Jenny was already typing on her phone. I'll need exclusive access to everything. This story will take years to tell properly. You'll have it. I turned to Melissa. What will you do? She wiped her eyes, straightened her shoulders. What I do best? Hunt down the ones who got away. The syndicate has tentacles everywhere. Someone needs to cut them off. Agent Coleman handed me a card. We'll need you in protective custody until this is over. No, I said firmly. I'm going back to the shack. Everyone stared at me. Sophia, that's insane. Elena protested. They know you're there. They could come for me anywhere. But the shack is mine now. Really mine. And I'm done running from shadows. That night, I stood in front of the Fisher shack, my shack, with a different perspective. It wasn't a rotting monument to my humiliation anymore. It was ground zero of an empire built on blood. And it would be ground zero for its destruction. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. But this time it wasn't signed JF. It was signed MW. Proud of you, sophomore, finish what I started. Look under the floorboard beneath the window where you saw the shadow. One more surprise. M. My hand shook. It couldn't be, could it? I ran into the shack, not caring about the darkness or the creaking floors. I found the spot, pried up the floorboard with my bare hands. Underneath was a metal box. Inside, a phone. It turned on immediately, showing a single video file. Marcus's face filled the screen, dated the day he died. Sophia, if you're watching this, then my plan worked even if I didn't survive it. The man who gave you this phone, he looks like me, doesn't he? Close enough to fool anyone who isn't looking too carefully. Close enough to die in my place while I disappear. My legs gave out. I sat on the floor, staring at the impossible. I'm sorry for the deception, but it was the only way. Richard would never stop hunting us unless he believed I was dead. The man who died? A terminal patient who volunteered. Who wanted his family provided for. They have been generously. Tears streamed down my face as Marcus continued. I can't come back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I'm alive. And I'm watching. And I'm helping where I can. James Fisher is my contact. When you're ready, he'll know how to find me. Until then, trust Melissa. Trust Coleman. And trust yourself. You're the strongest person I know, and you're about to prove it to the world. The video ended with Marcus saying the words I needed to hear. I love you, Sophia. This isn't goodbye. It's just see you later. The phone went dead in my hands. Its message delivered. Outside, I heard car engines approaching. Not the threatening rumble of SUVs, but the steady sound of federal vehicles, bringing more agents to protect the shack and continue the investigation. I stood up, slipping the phone into my pocket. Marcus was alive somewhere, watching and waiting. The syndicate was crumbling, its 40-year reign of terror ending. And I was standing in the center of it all. No longer the naive girl in those surveillance photos, but a woman who'd found her power in the most unlikely place. The shack had been meant to break me. Instead, it had revealed who I really was. Not just Sophia Whitmore, the deceived widow, but Sophia Fisher Whitmore, heir to an empire and architect of its redemption. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. Legal battles, testimonies, rebuilding what had been corrupted. But tonight, I stood in my shack, my inheritance, my weapon, my strength. And for the first time since this all began, I smiled. They'd given me a shack. I was going to give them justice. The first attempt on my life came 3 weeks after the arrests. I was in the courthouse filing paperwork to reclaim the Fisher properties when the clerk's eyes went wide, looking at something behind me. I turned just as a man in a maintenance uniform pulled a knife, lunging forward. Melissa appeared from nowhere, her body slamming into his before he reached me. They went down in a tangle of limbs, the knife skittering across the marble floor. Security swarmed, but Melissa had already subdued him. "Third one this week," she said calmly, brushing off her jacket. "They're getting desperate." She was right. With Richard and Patricia in federal custody, the syndicate's leadership had fractured. Some tried to flee, others turned state's evidence. But a hardcore faction decided killing me would solve their problems. As if my death would make the FBI forget the evidence, unfreeze accounts, make 40 years of crimes disappear. Agent Coleman assigned me a full protection detail, but I insisted on continuing the work. Every day, I sat in that courthouse, in lawyers' offices, systematically dismantling the empire built on my great-uncle's bones. And every day, the threats escalated. "You should reconsider the safe house," Coleman said that evening, reviewing footage of the attack. "We can handle the legal proceedings without you physically present." "No," I said, for what felt like the 100th time. "They want me to hide, to be afraid. I won't give them that satisfaction." But bravado was easier in daylight. That night, alone in the shack despite agents stationed outside, I jumped at every creak. The phone Marcus left sat on the table like a lifeline to a ghost. I'd watched his message countless times, but it didn't make his absence easier. A knock at the door made my heart race. "Mrs. Whitmore, it's Tom. Elena sent me to check on you." I recognized Tom's voice and opened the door. But the man standing there wasn't Elena's boyfriend. It was someone wearing Tom's face, literally, like a sophisticated mask. Before I could scream, a hand covered my mouth and everything went black. I woke in a concrete room, no windows, wrists zip-tied to a metal chair. Fluorescent lights, the smell of motor oil and rust. A warehouse. Finally awake, a voice came from the shadows. Patricia Whitmore stepped into view. Marcus's mother, who was supposed to be in federal custody, arrested on live television. "How?" "Money, dear. Enough money can buy anything. Even a body double to serve your sentence." She pulled up a chair, sitting across from me with the same perfect posture. "You've caused quite a mess, Sophia. 40 years of careful planning. Destroyed by a nobody who should have been grateful for what she was given." "You mean destroyed by the truth coming out?" She slapped me. The crack echoed. "Truth? You want to talk about truth?" "The truth is this town was dying before we took control. Unemployment at 30%, crime everywhere. We saved it. By murdering anyone who got in our way. By making hard choices. Joseph Fisher was destroying the local economy. Yes, we stopped him permanently. And Marcus. You killed your own son. A hard choice." Patricia's composure cracked slightly. "Marcus was weak. He fell in love with you. Actually fell in love despite knowing what you were. Richard gave him every opportunity to come back to us, but he chose you. The venom in that last word could have melted steel. So you had him murdered. I had him removed from the equation. Just like I'm about to remove you." She stood, smoothing her skirt. "But first, you're going to sign some documents. Transfer the Fisher properties back to our control. Publicly recant your accusations. Admit you fabricated evidence in grief-driven madness." "Never." Patricia smiled, a cold expression. She pulled out her phone, showing a live video feed. Elena and Tom, the real Tom, tied up in another room. Sign or they die. Simple as that. My blood turned to ice. They have nothing to do with this. They helped you. That's enough. She placed the documents in front of me, unlocking one of my hands. "Sign." I picked up the pen with a trembling hand, looking at the legal documents that would undo everything. Elena and Tom versus justice for 40 years of victims. How could I choose? 5 seconds, Patricia said, her finger hovering over her phone screen. I started to sign, but something in the video caught my eye. A shadow moving behind Elena and Tom, barely visible. Then another. I pressed the pen to paper, writing slowly, buying time. Patricia leaned closer, eager to see her victory. That's when the lights cut out. In the darkness, I heard Patricia's startled gasp, then a struggle. Emergency lighting kicked in a moment later, casting everything in a red glow. Patricia was on the ground, unconscious. Melissa stood over her with a tactical baton. Took you long enough, I said, my relief overwhelming. Had to wait for the full team to get in position. She cut my restraints and handed me a gun. Can you shoot? Marcus taught me. Good, because we're not out yet. The warehouse was a maze of corridors. Patricia hadn't been alone. We could hear shouting, footsteps converging. Melissa led the way, her movements professional, lethal. We found Elena and Tom in a side room, guarded by two men who didn't expect us to come in shooting. Melissa took them down with non-lethal shots while I worked on freeing my friends. Sophia. Elena hugged me tightly. We thought you were dead when you disappeared. Not yet, I said. But the sound of approaching vehicles made us freeze. Through a dirty window, I saw black SUVs surrounding the building, but also FBI vehicles, police cars, even news vans. The cavalry had arrived, but so had what remained of the syndicate's forces. This is about to get messy, Melissa said, checking her weapon. Stay low. Move fast. And then the wall exploded inward. Concrete and rebar flying everywhere. Through the hole came men in tactical gear. No badges. Private military contractors. The kind money could buy when you were desperate enough. The firefight was chaos. Melissa engaged them immediately, but we were outnumbered. Tom pulled Elena behind an overturned table while I tried to remember everything Marcus had taught me about shooting under pressure. Then I heard it, Patricia's voice over an intercom. Burn it all. If we can't have it, no one can. The smell hit us first. Smoke, gasoline, something chemical. They were going to burn the warehouse with us inside. Move. Melissa shouted, pointing to an exit. But as we ran, flames raced along the walls. The exit was blocked by debris. Tom threw his shoulder against it, but it wouldn't budge. The smoke was thicker. The heat unbearable. Sirens outside, so close, but so far. That's when I saw him. A figure in the smoke, moving against the chaos. For a moment, I thought it was another mercenary, but then he turned toward us. And even through the haze, I knew that profile, that way of moving. Marcus. He gestured urgently toward a section of wall that looked solid, but gave way when he pushed, revealing a hidden passage. This way. Now. Elena gasped. Tom stood frozen, but there was no time for reunions or explanations. We ran into the passage, Marcus leading us through what must have been old smuggling tunnels. Behind us, the roar of flames grew louder. We emerged into daylight, 100 yards from the warehouse, gasping and covered in soot. FBI agents immediately surrounded us, Coleman at their head. Marcus Whitmore, she said, her gun drawn. You're supposed to be dead. Can we discuss that after you arrest my mother? Marcus replied, pointing at the warehouse where Patricia was being dragged out by agents, her composure finally shattered. The reunion I'd imagined dozens of times was nothing like the reality. We were in an FBI field office. Marcus in handcuffs, despite having saved us. I was still processing the fact that he was alive. I know you're angry, he said quietly. Angry. I laughed, but it came out broken. You let me think you were dead. You let me grieve. Let me. It was the only way to keep you safe. As long as my father thought I was dead, he focused on containing the damage instead of hunting us. If he'd known I was alive, you could have told me. Found a way to let me know. How? Every communication was monitored. Every person who knew increased the risk. Even Melissa didn't know until today. He leaned forward, his eyes intense. Sophia, I died for you. Literally. Died legally, officially, completely. Everything I was, everything I had, gone. Because keeping you safe was more important than anything else. Don't. I stood up, needing distance. Don't make this noble. You lied to me. Our entire relationship was built on lies. No. His voice was firm now. The assignment was a lie. The beginning was a lie. But falling in love with you? That was the truest thing that ever happened to me. It's why I couldn't go through with it. Why I started gathering evidence against my family. Why I'm sitting here now. Coleman entered. Mr. Whitmore, you're looking at serious charges. Fraud, conspiracy, fleeing a crime scene. I have immunity, Marcus said calmly. Full immunity granted by the Justice Department in exchange for my cooperation. Check with the Attorney General's office. I've been working with them for the past month, feeding them information about the syndicate's remaining operations. Coleman looked skeptical but made the call. Her expression changed as she listened, finally hanging up with a frustrated sigh. You're free to go. Both of you. Outside the federal building, Marcus and I stood awkwardly. Two strangers who had once promised each other forever. The shack, he said suddenly. We need to go there now. Why? Because in about an hour, the remaining syndicate members are going to make one last play, and the shack is the key to stopping them. The convoy heading to the shack looked like a presidential motorcade. FBI vehicles, state police, even a helicopter. Marcus sat beside me in the back of Coleman's SUV, explaining what he'd learned while dead. The shack isn't just where they hid evidence. It's built on the cornerstone of their entire financial structure. There's a vault underneath, not the cellar you found, but deeper. It contains the original incorporation documents for every shell company, every fraudulent trust, every illegal transfer. Destroy those documents and legally, billions in assets revert to their rightful owners, including you. So Patricia was trying to get me to sign new documents that would supersede the originals. But she needed the originals destroyed too, which is why they're coming for the shack. He pointed ahead where smoke was already visible on the horizon. They're going to try to burn it down. Vault and all. But when we arrived, the shack wasn't on fire. Instead, it was surrounded by armed syndicate members in a standoff with law enforcement. At their center stood Daniel Morrison, the smooth-talking lawyer, but now holding an assault rifle. The happy couple reunited, he called out through a megaphone. How touching. Here's the situation. We have explosives planted throughout the structure and the surrounding area. You come any closer, we detonate. The evidence goes up in smoke, and probably half of you with it. Coleman grabbed her radio, but Marcus put a hand on her arm. Let me talk to him. That's insane. I know these people. I know what they want. He looked at me. Trust me. Despite everything, I found myself nodding. Marcus walked toward the shack, hands raised. Snipers adjusted their positions. Everyone held their breath. Daniel, Marcus called out. You know this is over. Even if you destroy the documents, we have copies. Testimony enough to bury everyone involved. Copies can be challenged. Testimony can be recanted. But those originals, those are ironclad. Daniel's voice was desperate now. 40 years, Marcus. 40 years of building something magnificent. And you destroyed it for what? Love? For justice? For truth? For the chance to look at myself in the mirror without seeing my father's crimes. Marcus took another step forward. But mostly, yes, for love. Because that's the one thing you and my father never understood. There are things more valuable than power. That's when I saw it. Movement in the shack's broken window. Not a syndicate member, but that familiar silhouette I'd seen on my first night. James Fisher stepped out of the shadows. But not the elderly man from the library. This was Joseph Fisher himself, impossible as that was, looking exactly as he had in those 1970s photographs. Hello, Daniel, Joseph said, his voice carrying despite the distance. Been a while. Daniel's composure cracked completely. No, you're dead. We killed you. I saw the body. You saw a body. But you can't kill an idea, Daniel. You can't murder justice. It just waits. Patient. Until the right moment. Joseph walked closer, and in the afternoon sun, I could see through him. Literally see through him to the shack behind. Mass hallucination? I didn't know and didn't care, because Daniel and his men were backing away in terror, their weapons lowering. In that moment of distraction, FBI agents moved in, disarming them before they could recover. But one person wasn't distracted. Patricia. She emerged from behind the shack, a pistol in her hand, aimed directly at me. If I can't have my empire, she snarled, at least I can take Joseph's heir. 3 shots rang out simultaneously. Patricia's, missing me by inches. Melissa's, catching Patricia in the shoulder. And Marcus's, I hadn't even known he was armed, hitting his mother's gun hand, sending the weapon flying. Patricia fell, screaming in rage and pain. You shot me. Your own mother. You stopped being my mother the day you agreed to kill me, Marcus replied coldly. As the EMTs took Patricia away and the FBI processed the scene, I stood in front of my shack, battered, bullet scarred, but still standing. Joseph Fisher, or whatever he was, had vanished the moment the danger passed, leaving only questions. Marcus stood beside me, maintaining a careful distance. The vault's real. We should check it before what? Before you disappear again. I was thinking more like, before dinner. He pulled out his phone, showing me a reservation confirmation. Our anniversary restaurant. The table where he proposed. I know I have no right to ask, but... You faked your death. Yes. You let me mourn you. Yes. You manipulated me, even if it was to protect me. Yes. I turned to face him fully. And you gave up. Everything. Your family, your name, your entire life to keep me safe. I'd do it again. The emergency vehicles were leaving. The drama finally ending. Elena and Tom waited by their car, giving us space. Melissa was coordinating with Coleman, probably planning to hunt down the last syndicate stragglers. Jenny Martinez was already on camera, reporting live. One dinner, I said. Finally. You get one dinner to explain everything. Really everything. No more lies. No more secrets. Deal? We entered the shack together, using construction lights to navigate to the real vault Marcus described. It was there, hidden beneath the hidden cellar, a massive steel door like something from a bank. Inside were the documents he'd promised, but also something else, Joseph Fisher's real journal. The truth was simpler and sadder than all the theories. Joseph had discovered the syndicate's early crimes, tried to stop them, and paid with his life. But he'd hidden the evidence. Booby-trapped it in a way that would only activate if someone with Fisher blood tried to access it. That's why they needed me. Not just as a potential heir, but as the key to their own destruction. He planned it all, I said, reading Joseph's final entry. My mother's accidental meeting with my father, ensuring the bloodline continued but stayed hidden. Even you finding me. He'd left instructions, knowing that eventually, the syndicate would need a Fisher, a 40-year plan to bring justice. He was playing chess while everyone else played checkers, Marcus said. That evening at the restaurant, Marcus filled in the gaps. How he discovered his family's crimes. How he tried to find a way out that wouldn't get us both killed. How James Fisher, Joseph's very real, very alive son, had helped him fake his death and continue the fight from the shadows. So what now? I asked over dessert. You're legally dead. Your family's empire is crumbling. Where does Marcus Whitmore go from here? Marcus Whitmore stays dead, he said simply. But Marcus Fisher, Joseph's legally adopted son, thanks to documents backdated and filed in Switzerland, he has possibilities. That's fraud. That's justice. Poetic justice, maybe, but still justice. He reached across the table, not quite touching my hand. I know I can't ask you to forgive me. I know trust once broken might never heal. But I'm asking for the chance to try. I thought about the shack, about the secrets it had held, the truths it had revealed. How something meant to be worthless had become invaluable. How something meant to imprison me had set me free. We tear it down, I said suddenly. What? The shack. We tear it down and build something new. A community center. Something that gives back what your family stole. I finally took his hand. And we do it together. Not as husband and wife. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But as partners. Equal partners. Marcus squeezed my hand gently. Partners. 6 months later, I stood where the shack had been, watching construction crews break ground on the Fisher Community Center. The FBI investigation had resulted in over 200 arrests, the complete dismantling of the syndicate, and the recovery of nearly $1 billion in stolen assets. Patricia was serving life in federal prison, the real Patricia this time. Richard had died in custody, a heart attack brought on by seeing his empire crumble. Daniel Morrison had turned state's evidence, providing details about syndicate operations across the country. Melissa had disappeared, chasing the last remnants of corruption, but she sent postcards occasionally. No words, just pictures of places where justice had been served. Elena and Tom were engaged. Jenny had won a Pulitzer for her exposé. And Marcus? Marcus was standing beside me, Our relationship slowly rebuilding on a foundation of truth rather than lies. Any regrets? He asked, watching the construction. I thought about Joseph Fisher's ghost, if that's what it had been. About the shack that had seemed like a curse, but became a gift. About the journey from humiliation to triumph. No, I said, meaning it. No regrets. The shack was gone, but what it represented remained. The idea that truth, no matter how deeply buried, would eventually surface. That justice, no matter how long delayed, would eventually arrive. And that sometimes the things meant to break us become the very things that reveal our strength. As the sun set over the construction site, I felt Marcus's hand find mine. Not desperate or grasping. Just there. Available. Patient. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For being stronger than they thought. For fighting when it would have been easier to run. For showing me that love isn't a weakness to be exploited, but a strength to be celebrated. I squeezed his hand, watching our shadows lengthen across the ground where the shack had stood. We're not done yet. There are more syndicates out there. More corruption to expose. I know. He turned to face me. But we'll face them together. Together, I agreed. The Fisher Community Center would open in a year, built on the bones of the syndicate's darkest secret. But for now, we stood in the ruins of what was, planning what would be. Two survivors who had found strength in the most unlikely place. A worthless shack that had proved to be worth everything. My husband had left me a shack. And, in the end, it had given me back my life. So, tell me, if you discovered your entire life had been orchestrated by others, would you seek revenge or justice? And do you believe there's a difference? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.